Yo everyone, what's the haps? It's time to talk about the graps, about the wrestling. We're gonna talk all day. That's right, cause it's time for Graded. I'm Jack the Jobber. Look at me now, don't try to... So, Dynamite was a bit weird last night. Yes, that's right, it's time to talk about AEW this week. Actually, saying Dynamite is slightly incorrect. Of course, it was a special edition of Dynamite known as Beach Break last night. But how good was Beach Break? Personally, we'll get to that in a second, but to find out how good it was, there's only one way to find out really, and that's by assigning each individual segment a lovely individual grade. Yes, it's time for AEW Dynamite Beach Break Graded. So first of all, we have that big number one contendership tag team battle royal. If one man is eliminated, their partner is still in the match. Technically, that's the rule. And there's a lot of big teams in here, but one team that's absent is FTR, who've been banned from the match for their actions last week. So they've been replaced by Alex Reynolds and John Silver. Newer tag teams such as Top Flight and the Acclaimed are in there as well. The Acclaimed. Oh yeah, we're the Acclaimed. And they cut off Judas, which I think makes them my new favorite tag team now. And of course, possibly the biggest team in the match is the Young Bucks. They are the champions, but if they win, they get to select their opponents for Revolution. And also, they've heavily implied that they're going to choose the Good Brothers if they win. They come out last, and they start off really strong by doing stereo stage dives onto everybody below before anybody's even got into the ring. But Matt Jackson doesn't last very long in the match. He gets backdropped to the outside by the Proud and Powerful and lands on the stage bit opposite the hard cam end. So I'm wondering if that counts as an elimination, because he's on an elevated bit of the outside, but he's not on the floor. And I was half expecting him to get back in towards the end and do a bit of a sneaky, but it turns out no, it does count, and he was eliminated. Other big moments early on include Luchasaurus running absolutely wild. He choke slams at one point Grayson of the Dark Order right to the floor, just right to the floor from the apron. Anthony Bounds is there to try and catch him, but he just bounces off him and just hits the floor quite hard. Hopefully everybody's alright. Luchasaurus, though, is eliminated by members of the Dark Order, but not members of their individual teams in the match. So, like, the different units team up together to get rid of Luchasaurus. They also did the same early on in the match with Jake Hager. So the Dark Order really using the numbers game to their advantage to get rid of the bigger threats. And the rivalry between Private Party and Top Flight continues. They both pick off one member of each other's team, but then Mark Quinn manages to save Isaiah Cassidy from elimination in sort of silly string fashion on the outside, not letting his feet touch the floor. So that's good for him. Good teamwork, good friendship. We'd love to see it. Nick Jackson is, of course, on his own for most of this match because of Matt's early elimination, but he manages to get rid of Santana and Ortiz. The Good Brothers, who are not in the match, come out to ringside to cheer him on, and he's a bit curious about this. He's like, guys, what are you doing here? Don't distract me. But they're actually here to help him, because when Isaiah Cassidy hits the ropes, they low bridge him from the outside and he falls out. And Nick's not too happy about it. He's a bit conflicted. But as Nick's questioning them, he gets run up on from behind by MJF, who just throws him out. And that leaves us with a final six. The three Inner Circle members remaining: Jericho, MJF, and Sammy Guevara. Jericho's giving them a bit of a pep talk in the corner. And then the other three, the three non-Inner Circle members, the Outer Circle members in the match: Max Caster of the Acclaimed, Darius Martin of Top Flight, and also Jungle Boy. Jungle Boy bravely clings onto the bottom rope as various different guys try and kick him out, but then when he gets up, MJF just throws him out anyway, and it was a bit of a weird spot. I don't know if I missed something here, or maybe the camera missed something, not quite certain. Max Caster eliminates MJF, and I think it's fair to say that Sammy Guevara isn't exactly devastated about that. Then Caster is eliminated by Darius Martin, leading to a final three of Jericho, Sammy, and Darius. Both Darius and Sammy start battling to try and get each other over the top rope. Jericho sneaks up and tips them both out. He thinks he's won it, he turns away, but Darius hangs on while Sammy crashes to the floor. Darius tries to springboard back in, Judas effect back elbow, Darius spills to the outside, and Chris Jericho and MJF have won the Tag Team Battle Royal. B grade from me to start off the show as Sammy storms off all disappointed. It wasn't the cleanest Battle Royal I've ever seen. It probably wasn't as good as last year's version, but at the same time, it was perfectly enjoyable stuff, and there were some nice storyline developments too. Next up, Tony Schiavone's in the ring, and that can only mean one of a couple of things. It's either an interview with Dr. Britt Baker, DMD, or more likely in 2021, it's an interview with Sting! That was good, I got the pitch right. Yes, Sting's out, Darby's out, they're going to do a bit of a talky talk with Tony, but they are interrupted immediately from the Tron by Team Taz, who are out in the car park because they're not allowed in the building after they beat up all those poor merch guys last week. Taz points out that he's learned that next week Darby Allin is defending his TNT Championship against Joey Janela, and he says that all of Team Taz will be keeping a very close eye on that. Ricky Starks then says that he feels like Sting isn't the same man he used to be, and the promo basically ends there. Then Sting gets on the mic back in the arena and says, "Oh, Ricky, you think that I'm not the man that I used to be? Maybe you need to have a closer look." Oh, and then him and Darby leave. Darby doesn't even get a chance to speak, really, and that's the end of the segment. This gets a C+ grade from me, unfortunately. These Darby and Sting segments are basically becoming very one note. It was perfectly acceptable as a build towards the street fight. They've got quite a way to go until that match, so they've got to fill time, and I understand that, but this was such a massive amount of pageantry with the full Sting entrance and everything for what was essentially a very basic promo. I think they could have achieved the same exact thing in just a short video package, leaving more time for other stuff on the show, such as the women's division, for example. Often it's criticised for not getting enough time. Anyway, Britt Baker and Thunder Rosa's next. Now, in all seriousness, this match did get a decent chunk of time, to be fair, and it was a good one. Both women did really well. Thunder Rosa came storming out. She's starting off the match hot because of the big feud between the pair of them, and then Britt immediately goes for the lockjaw, but Thunder Rosa manages to sneak her way out of it. And they go back and forth. Thunder Rosa is clearly the stronger competitor. They battle out to the ramp area, where Thunder Rosa hits a nasty Death Valley driver on Britt, a crunching Death Valley driver right on the ramp. Britt beats the count, quite bravely for a heel actually, but then takes a nasty dropkick right to the face, but she fights back. She hits several moves at this point, a sling blade, a super kick to the face, a big air raid crash, but Thunder Rosa is able to kick out at 2. Britt hits a big curb stomp like Seth Rollins. She gets the glove from Rebel at ringside. She's looking for the lockjaw, but her and Thunder Rosa battle back and forth on the mat. Neither one can really get an advantage. Rosa's going for roll-ups, Britt Baker's going for the lockjaw. Neither one can really gain an edge. That is until Rosa powers out with a big back suplex and another Death Valley driver for a near fall, and Britt Baker's in trouble. Rebel senses this from the outside. She sneaks into the ring, removes one of the turnbuckle pads, and then gets the hell out of there. And then, because Britt's noticed this, Rebel shouts that to her. She communicates to her from the outside. What a wonderful manager she is. Really, really good stuff. You don't see Arn Anderson doing that, do you? He does communicate from the outside, but he doesn't cheat to help Cody win, does he? Rebel does. Britt then launches Thunder Rosa into that exposed turnbuckle. Thunder Rosa is completely out of it. Britt puts on the lockjaw anyway, but Rosa's completely unconscious, and the referee calls for the bell. Britt Baker wins. This was the best thing on the show at this point for me, easily. An A- grade, great match between the two of them. Very hard hitting at times, and I'm completely fine with the cheap finish too, because it's either going to lead to Thunder Rosa gaining revenge on Britt Baker, or it's going to lead to Britt moving up in the ranks and hopefully challenging Hikaru Shida for that AEW Women's title. Next up, we head backstage to what took place last week, apparently. It's like a pre-recorded segment where Matt Hardy is with Hangman Page. He's like, "Oh, I'm glad you decided to join my locker room," and Hangman's like, "Whoa, whoa, 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 whoa. I'm here to get changed. I'm using it as a locker room. I'm not joining another stable. I'm not joining your group or signing a contract or anything like that." And Matt's like, no, of course not, of course not. But I was thinking, maybe to get yourself back in the Dark Order's good books. I know you broke their hearts when you didn't try and join them. I thought maybe me and you could team up just for one night only to take on Serpentico and Dr. Luther for ruining -1's birthday the other week. And Hangman's like, yeah, okay then. And then flash forward to this week, to Beach Break, and that match is taking place right now. We get some unique offense from Dr. Luther, such as squashing Matt in the corner with a big splash, but Serpentico's in the way, but Luther doesn't care and just squashes his own partner in the corner as well. So Luther doesn't care, man. He just doesn't. He's a proper loose cannon, he is. It's not a very long match, but it doesn't need to be really to get the story across. Luther yanks Hangman down from the apron at one point because Hangman's looking for the buckshot on Serpentico. Hangman is on the outside now, quite exposed. Luther's on the apron. He goes for a big senton. Hangman just steps aside and Luther lands hard on the floor. I hope he's okay. Hangman does then get the buckshot on Serpentico. Looks like he's going to beat him, but then Matt Hardy tags himself in and steals the pinfall for himself. So they do win, but it's a bit uneasy for Hangman. This gets a B- grade, very basic match, but fine when it comes to storyline advancement. I am eager to see what Matt Hardy does next to try and get into Hangman's head. Now I'm just going to read off a list of names basically because we've got a very interesting update about that women's tournament. There's going to be two halves of the bracket. One half's going to be in the United States, the other half's going to be in Japan. So obviously that's to get around travel restrictions and stuff, but it leads to some very exciting new names for All Elite Wrestling. So in the Japanese half of the bracket, we've got Aja Kong, a legendary name there, other legendary names such as Emi Sakura, for example, who will be no stranger to AEW audiences. Also not stranger, Yuka Sakazaki, she's back. Ross is going to be absolutely delighted. We've got Veni, who I didn't think I was familiar with, but then I did some research. I believe she's a wrestler called Asuka. I think I've seen a few of her matches in DDT, and obviously they're not going to want to call her Asuka in AEW because to Western audiences that's going to get confusing. Also, we've got Ryo Mizunami, we've got Mei Suruga, we've got Rin Kadokura, and we've got Maki Ito. A lot of names there, some bigger than others, some will have bigger fan bases than others. I imagine that there's going to be a lot of new faces exposed to these wrestlers. I'm certainly not very familiar with all of them. So I think that this could be really interesting stuff. Now, on to the US half of the bracket. So the US half's going to have Serena Deeb, Riho is going to be back, Britt Baker, Tay Conti, Thunder Rosa, Nyla Rose, Anna Jay, and the very promising Layla Hirsch as well. This could be awesome. This could be really, really good. Now we head backstage where Marvez has bumped into Jericho and MJF, who are celebrating their victory in the Battle Royal, and they sack him off immediately. They're like, whatever, Marvez, go away. They head into the Inner Circle's locker room where everyone else in the Inner Circle is like, yeah, you guys did do it. You did win, to be fair to you. Apart from Sammy Guevara, who's like, what the hell? Sammy says to Jericho, look, what gives, man? You eliminated me right at the end. I just hate the way things are going. And Jericho's like, Sammy, we're the Inner Circle. We're all in this together. You were just collateral damage, but it worked in the end, didn't it? And Sammy's like, yeah. Why is it always us who are collateral damage, Chris? And he storms out, and Jericho goes after him like, Sammy, no. That was a weird noise I just made there. MJF, while that's happened, while they are out of the room, says to the rest of the Inner Circle, right, boys? I think it's about time we had a meeting, didn't we? Wardlow, could you just get the camera guy out of there, please? And the cameraman gets pushed out. We don't see what happens in the rest of the meeting, but it's intriguing stuff. Next up, it's wedding time. Oh my goodness, it's a wrestling wedding. Would this be better than most wrestling weddings? So we first see James Mitchell, the Sinister Minister. He is the Minister of the Proceedings, which makes a lot of sense, actually. And you know what? He hammed it up quite well in this segment. He did pretty well for himself. Kip's there, of course. He's the groom, obviously. Miro's there. He's the best man. Chuck Taylor, Charles Taylor, the butler, is there. And then here comes Penelope Ford, the bride. She is alongside Jerry Lynn. He's giving her away. Fair enough. Congratulations to him for getting involved. And if I don't sound too enthusiastic, it's because this segment was long and not ideal in my opinion. So they do the vows, and there's a lot of, I don't want to say tacky humour, because it's wrestling. Wrestling is inherently tacky a lot of the time. But there's a lot of obvious or not very imaginative humour, such as, you know, Kip giving a very arrogant groom's speech saying like, oh man, I'm so handsome, but also I love you very much. Penelope might not be that experienced a promo, I don't know, because they keep hers very short. She just says, Kip, you have the biggest, and then he cuts her off. And I'm like, well, I don't know, what was she going to say? And then Chuck Taylor gives the rings to Miro and he presents them to the bride and groom, and then they do the vows, which are like, do you, Kip, take Penelope and vice versa, to have and to grope for kayfabing all others for as long as you live. And I'm just like, oh, okay, it's dragging a bit now. It's dragging a little bit. When's the ambush going to happen? The Sinister Minister then says, does anybody have any objections? He does that whole thing. Miro cuts him off and says, look, I've been there before, and I know what happens, so let's skip that part. We're not doing that part. I actually thought that was quite funny. That was a highlight of this segment. Miro then gives his best man speech. He says weddings are all about love, and I'm sorry I didn't get you a present, Kip, but to be fair, my present to you, my gift to you, is my viciousness, my knowledge, my power, all that sort of thing. Kip's like, yeah, to be fair, you are really big and scary, so I understand. And then Miro says, speaking of gifts, what's that big suspicious parcel in the corner? And in the corner of the ring, there is a very human-sized gift box. Miro attacks it, throws it outside the ring. There's nobody in there. They've subverted the trope, guys. They're clever. But while this has all been going on, Chuck Taylor has sneakily handcuffed Miro's leg to the bottom rope. He shoves Kip. Kip falls into Penelope. Her face goes right into the cake, obviously. And then she jumps on Chuck's back. Kip starts beating him up. Who should save the day? Because of course there's someone inside the cake, but Orange Cassidy, who slowly pops out and joins in, and it's exactly what you imagine it to be. He hits the beach break on Kip Sabian. Chuck and Orange celebrate, and Penelope's crying because their wedding's been ruined. And the momentum of the show, I think, has also been ruined. I'm going to give this a D+ grade because I like a lot of the people involved, and I feel like their natural charm helped save this segment from a worse grade, but it still wasn't great. in my view. Because I kind of backed AEW to do something a bit more off the wall, a bit more left field with this, try and make it a bit more unique and modernize this trope and try and improve upon it. And instead they gave us pretty much, with one or two tweaks, the same tried and tested formula, which these days is hard to get right because it's been done so many times before. Also, is it just me, or does anybody else end up feeling sorry for the heels who've had their wedding ruined rather than, cheering on the babyfaces who've ruined their big day? Because I felt really bad for Penelope and Kip, to be honest. Anyway, moving on from the wedding, which took up a lot of time, we learn that Cody and Red Velvet versus Shaquille O'Neal and Jade Cargill is going to take place on just a weekly Dynamite on March 3rd, which I'm very surprised about, actually. I'm very surprised about, but apparently that's what's going ahead, so I guess we'll see it happen then. Next up, we get a Lumberjack match between Eddie Kingston and Lance Archer. Everybody dies, Lance charges out, and things start off hot straight away. But before he can really get stuck into Kingston, Archer is dragged out the ring by the heel babyfaces and just starts laying waste to them. He charges at pretty Peter Avalon, who steps aside, and Archer hits his head off the ring post, and Eddie Kingston assumes control. But shortly afterwards, Eddie Kingston's the one who spills to the outside. All the face Lumberjacks look at him, and he just starts beating them up because he's Eddie Kingston, and that's just what he does. All the heel Lumberjacks come round to brawl with the face Lumberjacks. They're all there in a mass outside the ring, so Lance Archer, thinks it'd be rude not to, and does a huge dive over the top rope onto everybody. Fun start to the match. Once the match has calmed down a bit and become a little bit more standard, the bunny decides that Archer is having too much of an advantage over Kingston and jumps on his back. She just gets in the ring and jumps on his back. And Archer's like, right, there's a woman on my back who weighs far less than me. I'm just going to hit her with the blackout immediately. But it doesn't work because Eddie Kingston hits him with a back fist, and the bunny escapes and looks pretty shaken up by the whole ordeal. She's a wrestler. Now, towards the end of the match, something happens on the outside, which I can't explain. The camera misses the start of it. In fact, the production was a little bit off this week. The camera's missed a few little things here and there in the Battle Royal at the start of the show, and also this pretty crucial moment, it seems, or maybe it's just what Jake Roberts does, because at one point he absolutely KOs Angelico on the outside with a right hand for, as far as we can tell, no reason at all. Then again, it is Jake Roberts. He's quite a volatile character. Maybe that's just what he would do. Maybe that's just the nature of his persona. Just looking at Angelico and thinking, yeah. It's a huge punch. Angelico sells it like absolute death. And we catch Jake Roberts giving him a little well done pat on the ground as well. I don't know if that was mocking in character or whether that was Jake saying, wow, you made me look really good there. In the ring, the Blade now gets involved, sets up a table, but then one of Bear Country, a tag team from primarily AEW Dark, gets in the ring and spears him through it. The Butcher tries to get involved. The other member of Bear Country gets him out of there. And we're just down to Kingston and Archer. It's not looking good for Eddie. Unpredictably, Archer hits the blackout 1, 2, 3 and gets his revenge for that loss to Eddie Kingston. This gets a B- grade. I love a crazy match now and again, but this was a little bit too ragged, a little bit too all over the place for me to really get into. However, it wasn't too bad, so I'm only giving it a B-. I'm not giving it like an F or something, but it could still have been a little bit more tightly planned and executed, I feel. Now we head to apparently some disturbing footage that FTR sent in to AEW, and it's there in a room somewhere, and they're talking to the camera and they're livid that they were kind of excluded from the tag team battle royal. They blame Jurassic Express, saying maybe they went to Tony Khan and got them banned from the match. Tully says this is because everybody fears the revelation, and then Harwood says, look, Jack, I assume he means Jungle Boy, we're not bad men, but sometimes we have to think, what would bad men do? And he reaches off camera and pulls somebody in, and we see that it's Marco Stunt strapped to a chair with tape across his mouth. They've kidnapped Marco Stunt. This is huge. Someone help him immediately. But instead, because this is wrestling, the commentary team go, oh no, they've kidnapped Marco Stunt. Right, we've got an absolutely huge main event coming up, lads. And that main event is Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers taking on Jon Moxley, PAC, and Ray Fenix. And the babyfaces all make their entrance in Moxley fashion from the side of the building somewhere, the bleachers somewhere, which is really cool. Nice touch. They walk down through the stands together. Shades of the Shield, but more Geordie and Lucha. And there are a number of big moments in this that I'm going to run through fairly swiftly because the match was a pretty long one-ish, I guess, for a TV match. Pat goes for the Black Arrow early on, but Omega and Gallows knock him down, so it looks like the faces have the advantage straight away. Moxley manages to run Omega into the guardrail pretty early on as well, but then Gallows and Anderson beat him up for his troubles. A little bit later than that, PAC and Phoenix get on the corners and they look like they're going to dive onto Kenny in the ring, but instead they hit huge stereo moonsaults to Gallows and Anderson on the outside. That is a cool moment too. And then, as AEW tag matches always seem to, this quickly becomes the Fenix show. He does like a fake moonsault of all things, diving off the top rope backwards into the ring, then just rolling through, leaping up into a cutter. I've never seen that before, I don't think, unless it's happened in another Fenix match that I've seen. He also does one of his ludicrous suicide dives onto Anderson, I believe, just crushing him against the guardrail. Fenix, I'm so scared for you, but at the same time, the stuff you do is really awesome, so I feel irresponsible cheering you on, but it is cool. Back in the ring, Omega and Moxley are the legal men. Moxley goes for the paradigm shift, Omega reverses it into a paradigm shift of his own. 1-2, PAC from the top rope with a 450 to break it up. Man, the match really kicks into a higher gear around this stage. Anderson then tries to hit Moxley with the gun stun, but Moxley decides to steal his finisher and hits him with the gun stun. Stolen finishers all over the place in this one, it turns out. And then, unfortunately, the Magic Killer gets hit on Fenix. Moxley tries to get in the ring to save him. Kenny Omega runs across, massive V-trigger, knocking Moxley back to the outside. And the pinfall is made on Fenix, and the heels win. Aww. And then the heels do a beatdown on Fenix after the match. Lance Archer runs out to try and save the day. He clears out both of the Good Brothers. They're all brawling on the outside, leaving Moxley and Omega alone in the ring. And at this point, it looks like Moxley's going to get a measure of revenge on Omega, and instead, he gets clocked from behind by a masked figure. And the masked man reveals that he is none other than Hideo Itami from NXT. He's crossed the divide. He's moved from one side of the war to the other. No, I'm joking. I mean, it is Hideo Itami. It's KENTA. It's KENTA, who of course is no longer with NXT. He's back in Japan. He's now with New Japan. He's a member of the Bullet Club. It all fits. It's a conspiracy. KENTA hits the go to sleep on Moxley, and obviously he's his #1 contender for the IWGP United States title. But more importantly than that is the overarching meaning of this. This confirms a working relationship between New Japan and AEW, and the possibilities are very exciting indeed. That's the end of the show, with Omega standing tall over Moxley in a bit of an online exclusive kind of thing afterwards. We get Omega thanking KENTA in the parking lot, saying like, "Oh, too sweet, bro, Bullet Club for life," and KENTA's like, "I'm not your friend, mate, I'm just here to beat Moxley, can you do one?" And I'm like, whoa, ructions. But I'm sure the Bullet Club is fine, because this is 2018 or whatever, apparently. This match and segment gets an A grade from me, probably the best thing on the show. Really exciting action in the 6-man tag, really exciting from KENTA as well at the end there. I was hoping this would maybe push it into A+ territory, but I couldn't quite give it an A+, unfortunately. But it was a really hot end to the show. But how good was the show overall? Let's find out. Well, first of all, before I give this grade, right, I want to point out that Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa was great, and the main event was fantastic, and the KENTA reveal was brilliant and really exciting for the future and whatever this means. But I'm giving the show a B-, because apart from those two segments, this just kind of felt off. Not just in terms of the disappointing nature of some of the segments, such as obviously the wedding, for example, and I feel sorry for everyone involved because I like all of them pretty much, but you know, it just felt a bit off. So did the production at times. As I mentioned, the cameras were missing things now and again. This was certainly one of the weaker Dynamite episodes I can remember recently, which is a shame because it was one of its big specials. It was Beach Break. And with Edge appearing on NXT this week, I wonder if this represents a bit of a swing in momentum. I don't know, but let me know what you think in the comments below. I'm giving it a B- grade, and I think that's probably quite fair. It was saved a lot by those two big positive segments. But you know, that's just my opinion. Let me know yours, as I say, in the comments section down below. And thank you very much for watching this video. I've been Jack from Cultaholic.com. Keep yourselves safe out there, stay positive, and I'll see you very soon.